headlines. 3 American detainees in North Korea called for Washington's help as they were allowed to do interviews with CNN. NATO says it's responding to the Ukraine crisis by creating a spearhead rapid reaction force. And the FBI and Apple say they're investigating after a massive leak of a cloud data service unleashed intimate pictures of dozens of celebrities. Hello and welcome to Arirang News. Thanks for tuning in. Diplomatic sources say North Korea will send an envoy to Europe later this week. This trip coincides with a visit by North Korea's foreign minister to New York later in the month, raising speculation that Pyongyang is speeding up efforts to re-engage with the international community. Hwang Sung-hee reports.
A possible trip to Europe by a seasoned North Korean diplomat is drawing further attention to Pyongyang's recent diplomatic overture. Kang Sok-ju, secretary of the Central Committee of the Workers' Party of Korea, will reportedly visit Germany, Belgium, Switzerland, and Italy starting late this week. Given his status in North Korea, Kang's trip may serve a specific purpose.
Kang Sok-ju is the point man when it comes to North Korea's nuclear weapons program. For the past 25 years, Kang Sok-ju's presence in Europe can be also understood as North Korea expanding its diplomatic effort to make progress with regard to its nuclear stance and missile programs with European countries and potentially with the United States.
Unconfirmed reports say senior U.S. officials visited North Korea last month on a military aircraft. North Korean Foreign Minister Lee Soo-yong will be in New York City for the UN General Assembly that begins on September 24th. Speculation is ripe Pyongyang and Washington may revive their dormant communication channels, and Europe has been the site of secret meetings between the two countries in the past. Kang may also lead high-level talks with Japan during his stay in Switzerland. His visit coincides with a seminar on the Japanese abduction issue slated for September 10th in Geneva, which senior Japanese officials are expected to attend. As Pyongyang takes strides to re-engage with Washington and Tokyo, some say Seoul could ultimately be the one left out of the diplomatic circle. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
And in another sign that Pyongyang wants to open up lines of communication with Washington, the regime allowed 3 American detainees in North Korea to speak to CNN. Watchers say the North is using the media to bring Washington to the negotiating table. Choi Yoo-sun has more.
In an exclusive interview with CNN, the 3 American detainees said they were being treated humanely, but that they hoped Washington would soon help them return home. Kenneth Bae, serving a 15-year sentence for alleged hostile acts to overthrow the North Korean government, said he was doing hard labor 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. His diabetes, high blood pressure, and kidney stones have worsened, having gone back and forth between the hospital and the labor camp for the past 18 months. Asking the U.S. government to send an envoy to win their release, Bae said his only hope is returning home and seeing his family again. Matthew Todd Miller, awaiting trial after he ripped up his tourist visa and sought asylum in the North, said Washington, which often promotes its priority of protecting U.S. citizens, wasn't doing enough to help him. Jeffrey Edward Fowle, soon to stand trial after leaving a Bible at his hotel in the communist state, urged CNN to let the world know more about his predicament. Having no diplomatic relations with North Korea, the U.S. government's only contact with the men is through the Swedish embassy in Pyongyang. Stressing there is no greater priority than the welfare and safety of Americans abroad, the State Department urged Pyongyang to grant Kenneth Bae amnesty in light of his poor health. North Korea's strategic use of the media to seek dialogue with the U.S. is increasing pressure on the Obama administration ahead of the midterm elections in November. Now the question is whether Washington will send a former president or a prominent political figure, as it has in the past, to broker the detainees' release, and if that could lead to a resumption of dialogue between the U.S. and the North. Choi Yoo-sun, Arirang News.
North Korea is beginning to send its athletes competing in the upcoming Incheon Asian Games starting next week. Seoul's Unification Ministry says the North sent a letter via the Inter-Korean hotline Tuesday morning outlining detailed plans for its participation in the event. The first group of the North 273-member delegation will arrive on September 11th. The delegation will be divided into 6 groups that will fly into the south using a route that passes over the West Sea. The Asian Games will kick off on September 19th in the South Korean port city of Incheon.
For the latest in news that impacts Korea and the world, join Kang Sok-ju for a lively half hour that covers politics, business, international news, and much more. Live at 8 every weeknight on Arirang TV.
Human Rights Council headquarters in Geneva on Thursday, finding ways to. The Korean government and the ruling Saenuri Party have tentatively agreed to increase next year's budget by 5%. That would put the budget at around $370 billion. That's lower than the 6% increase government ministries and agencies had requested and much lower than the 10% spike analysts had been expecting when the new economic team rolled out its stimulus measures back in July. Welfare programs stand to see the biggest budget increase, accounting for more than 30% of the total budget for the very first time. The government and the ruling party plan on finalizing the budget by the end of next month before putting it up for legislative approval. The rapidly changing e-banking environment, along with the sector's efforts to maximize profitability, have prompted banks around the country to cut down the number of their branches. Some 270 have gone within the past year. Song Ji-sun tells us more.
1 out of every 20 bank branches have closed down over the past year. As of the end of July, the total number of bank branches in Korea stood at just over 5,100, down 5% from a year earlier. That's the biggest decrease in 17 years. The 1997 Asian financial crisis that folded 5 small-sized banks and shuttered nearly 8,000 branches triggered a chain of mergers among Korean banks. The move was followed by major restructuring that closed down more branches, and internet banking and automation have further reduced their number. Only 11% of all money transfers were made through counters at the bank branches, with the rest handled through computers, smartphones, ATMs, or telephones. Leading the trend are people in their 20s and 30s, many of whom say they only visit the bank when they need help with online banking.
I go to banks once every 3 months or so, only to get a new authentication card, but I use mobile banking almost every day. There's no need to carry much cash around these days, and I can do money transfers instantly on my smartphone.
Such changes led to a reduction in workforce in the industry. Major banks in Korea such as KB, Shinhan, Hana, Korea Exchange, Standard Chartered, and Citibank reduced their workforce by an average of 3% last year. The umbrella group of banking labor unions has called for a one-day strike on Wednesday by bank employees to back their demand of ensuring employment. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
The amount of loans that Korea's central bank granted, that is, to local companies and public enterprises has reached its highest level in 15 and a half years. The Bank of Korea says the amount stood at roughly $13 billion as of the end of last month, up 65% on year. It came as the central bank printed more notes to support small and mid-sized companies with less room in the government budget due to a lack of tax revenue. This has experts concerned as excessive use of the Bank of Korea's authority to issue notes could lead to inflationary pressures. Korea's top 3 entertainment agencies have scored big in the first half of this year as they diversified their business models targeting the East Asian market. JYP Entertainment sales in the first 6 months of this year soared the most, jumping nearly threefold on year, followed by YG Entertainment at 28% and SM Entertainment at 20%. JYP saw its first surplus in 3 years from strong sales in the Japanese market, and YG, which backs global names like Psy and Big Bang, cashed in big on concert ticket sales in Japan, while SM continued to get a boost in its stronghold countries like China and Hong Kong. The Asia-Pacific region consumes roughly 60% of the world's energy output, and demand is on the rise. So to help enhance cooperation, the APEC energy ministers have gathered in Beijing for a 2-day meeting. There, Korea's Vice Minister of Trade, Industry and Energy, Moon Jae-do, emphasized the need for cheaper gas supplies to Asian countries, pointing to the fact that Europe pays less than Asia. APEC members agreed to work more closely to deal with gas as well as oil price fluctuations by diversifying their energy supply methods. The world's first solar plant constructed over water has started operations here in Korea. The local developers say similar plants like this one could one day make waves in the global energy market. Our Kim Hyun-bin tells us more.
This is the world's first rotating solar power plant on water. Unlike other conventional solar facilities that are fixed on land, this module was designed to move along with the movement of the sun during the day, which increases energy efficiency by 22%. The floating plant in Ansong, Gyeonggi-do province consists of 1,600 panels that can produce 2,000 kilowatts of energy per day, which is enough to supply about 200 households. The concept of movable solar panels is not new, but other versions consume a great amount of energy to rotate.
Using water buoyancy, 2 motor engines are enough to operate an 8,000 square meter generator that follows the sun's movement to maximize efficiency.
The installation can withstand winds of 50 meters per second and can adjust this level depending on water level changes. Water fountains around the module are designed to lower the temperature of the water to prevent outbreaks of algae, while also providing a beautiful lighting attraction at night. Researchers estimate that if rotating floating power plants are set up in a quarter of the total surface of reservoirs nationwide, it would generate over 5,000 kilowatts per hour, providing a possible breakthrough in the country's power shortage. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Korea is putting the brakes on its push towards an emission-free auto market amid mounting pressure from local and global automakers. The Korean government says on this Tuesday that it will delay carrying out its scheme to cut carbon emission by 5 years until the end of 2020. Finance Minister Choi Kyung-won said the plan places too much of a burden on automakers and car buyers while having little impact on reducing carbon emissions. The system would charge consumers who purchase vehicles with high carbon emissions while giving incentives to those who buy eco-friendly models. But the Korean government says it's still carrying out an emission trading system starting next year and also expanding subsidies for hybrid and electric cars. The concept of the so-called sharing economy has been around for quite some time now around the world. Although a late starter, Korea's peer-to-peer marketplace is also growing quickly. Our Kim Ji-yeon tells us more.
Green Car is a car-sharing service founded in 2011 that makes it easier for people to lend out cars at low prices. It's one of the most prominent examples of the sharing economy in Korea, in which people become more like users than owners of assets. Around 240,000 people have used this service so far. All it takes is a few taps on a smartphone application.
It's really easy to use this car sharing service. It's only $3 for using this Avante model for 30 minutes.
Users are instantly updated on what kind of vehicles are available in one of the so-called green zones. locations where people can pick up and drop off their vehicles after they're done using them. There are 700 green zones throughout the country, and so it takes just 10 minutes by foot on average to reach one. Green Car Marketing and Communications Director Hwang Sung-hee says that technological developments have allowed the convergence of the appropriate hardware and software, providing the best platform for the car-sharing service.
The technological advances make it easier for us to operate as platform providers for vehicles. GPS allows us to track where the vehicles are and who's using them, and through the smartphone application, users can easily lock and unlock the cars they wish to use.
Companies like Green Car are using their sharing economy to find ways to utilize idle assets and providing a platform to make them more resourceful. Kim Jeong, Arirang News.
Korea's ballet culture has developed quite rapidly over recent decades for multiple reasons, one being an open exchange program. Our Lee Myun-hee takes us to one such program called Ballet World, currently taking place in the artsy neighborhood of Daehangno.
Ballet is one of the world's most recognized forms of dance, celebrated for its beauty, its grace, and its capacity for the exquisite. Anything from the classical to the contemporary. It's time once again for the K-Ballet World Annual Gathering of ballet students and dancers from some of Korea's top ballet troupes, as well as from around the world.
Through this relationship with foreign countries, we can develop the culture of Korean ballet. It's also a great opportunity for choreographers to stage their works to a wide audience, including those abroad, as this year's theme is Korean ballet to the world and world ballet to Korea.
The ballet extravaganza was established specifically for the development of Korean ballet through exchanges with companies around the globe. And it's through these relationships and networks that have enabled Korean dancers to excel in both the classical and modern forms of ballet. Dancer Seo Deok-in has a family history of ballet in Korea, but he himself went abroad to learn the techniques used around the world. And as a result, he now has a better understanding of the similarities as well as the differences between ballet cultures, a knowledge he can use to strengthen his own career.
Especially in Asia, they're more technical people, they're more kind of speedy and more active. They do like this kind of stuff. In Europe, they're more details, slow and more emotional. They speak like this, slow and more emotional, and this kind of stuff. So, well, I prefer Europe because this is my style, but well, it depends of the people.
As with anything, preference will always vary. But one thing is undeniable, and that is the fact that Korean ballet dancers have advanced through the art in just a short span of time, demonstrating extreme technique and strength, which has gained the Korean ballet culture recognition in the global community. Lee Myun-hee, Arirang News.
In light of the ongoing military conflict between Ukraine and Russia, NATO is taking measures to ensure that a similar situation does not occur in other parts of the world. And of course, we turn to Son Jung-in joining us from the News Center. Chung-in, what's the backdrop of this latest development?
Well, the move comes as a government in Kiev which has accused Moscow of launching a Great War, asked NATO for help to avoid further breakdown in the area. The military alliance has announced plans to launch a rapid response force with thousands of troops. Our Connie Kim reports with more.
NATO's plan to form a spearhead force of thousands of troops to protect its 28 member nations is widely expected to be approved during the NATO summit in Wales on Thursday. Although the ultimate size of the rapid response force has not been decided, senior officials at NATO say it will consist of an estimated 4,000 troops that could be deployed to an alliance state within 48 hours. It's designed to stave off a future crisis like the one unfolding in eastern Ukraine, where government forces are engaged with pro-Russian rebels. NATO Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen said the task force would be trained to counter attacks by unidentified armed assailants, tactics NATO says pro-Russian separatists are employing against Ukrainian troops. It's a type of action that Ukraine and Baltic state members have been calling for since Russia annexed Crimea in March. There were questions about what type of measures NATO could take, considering the 1997 NATO-Russia Founding Act prohibits NATO from stationing soldiers in Eastern and Central Europe permanently. NATO officials say it'll rotate its combat forces in the Baltic states, which would not violate the treaty. NATO's move aims to stop a repeat of Russia's incursion in Ukraine, which President Petro Poroshenko has said is headed toward a great war of the likes Europe has yet to see. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
And now on to the latest internet security threat. Intimate photos of more than dozens of celebrities have been leaked online. And it's, of course, raising major concerns. How are authorities reacting to this latest high-profile breach?
Well, the FBI says it, quote, addressing the matter, and Apple, whose iCloud storage service is under suspicion for being the hacked network, says it's also investigating the case from its end as it takes user privacy very seriously. Our Yurian has the details.
Nude photos of Oscar-winning actress Jennifer Lawrence and pop star Rihanna were among the private photos of celebrities that turned up on the website 4chan. A spokesperson for Lawrence confirmed the authenticity of the images and slammed the hackers for a flagrant violence of privacy and vowed to prosecute anyone who shared the images online. Actress Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who also had her intimate photos leaked, criticized the people who posted and viewed her photos and said they were taken in privacy of her and her husband's home. The anonymous user who leaked the photos claimed they were obtained from Apple's iCloud accounts, sparking fears about the safety and security of the service. When activated, the iCloud service automatically uploads photos, emails, and contacts on your smartphone to multiple electronic devices, including tablet PCs and laptops. Apple released a brief statement on Monday saying it takes user privacy seriously and is currently actively investigating the report. If the hackers are caught, they could serve some major jail time. Christopher Cheney, who was found to have leaked nude photos of celebrities like Scarlett Johansson, was sentenced to 10 years behind bars. Yurian, Arirang News.
And Changin, let's move on to Japan. That's battling the first cases of dengue fever in almost 70 years. We're hearing that 19 more people were confirmed as infected, bringing the total to 22 now. Have authorities traced the start of this outbreak?
Well, the first 3 identified victims last week are believed to have fallen ill after they were bitten by mosquitoes in the popular Yoyogi Park in central Tokyo. Health officials say they have sprayed 800 liters of pesticides there in hopes of killing off mosquito colonies. These are the first known domestic cases of the mosquito-borne disease to hit the country since World War II. Japan's health ministry said none of the sick are in critical condition and called for a calm public response. Dengue fever is not contagious but is transmitted by the bite of an infected mosquito and can cause symptoms such as severe headaches, muscle pain, and mild fever.
And we hear that a woman in Mexico celebrated her 127th birthday this year. She must be the oldest person alive in the world.
Well, unofficially she is. Unfortunately, she lost her birth certificate while moving homes 40 years ago. Her name is Leandra Becerra Lumbreras, born August 31st in 1887. According to her family, her secret to a long life is simple: eating well, getting good sleep, and keeping herself entertained through her favorite hobby, sewing. Meanwhile, officials in Mexico are in the process of issuing her a new birth certificate so that she can officially be recognized as the oldest living person on Earth. But until then, Misao Okawa in Japan, who is 12 years younger than Lumbreras, is the official record holder according to Guinness World Records.
But we will have to try to keep our birth certificates safe just in case. You never know. Thank you so much, Changin, for those stories, and we'll see you back here in just about 2 hours.
Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Kim Bo-kyung with your weather updates. Now we're getting autumn showers here in Seoul, and both Jeollado provinces and Chungcheongdo provinces are also getting 20 millimeters of heavy downpours per hour. Brace yourselves for another 50 to 100 millimeters of precipitation, and some regions, including Seoul and Gyeonggi-do province, could get more than 150 millimeters, so please be aware of that. Now, a pre-heavy rainfall advisory has been issued for some parts of the central regions as well as southern coastal areas, while a preliminary strong wind watch is in effect for the western coastal regions. Well, it looks like we may be in for another round of torrential rain, this accompanied by stormy conditions, so make sure to gear up for the harsh weather. On to tomorrow's readings. Seoul reaches 22 degrees, while cities down south hover around 25. On to other places. Daejeon and Jeju, Dokdo that is, make it to the mid-20s, Mount Kumgang to 20 degrees. That's all from me for now, and back to you, Teddy.
Pyongyang, thank you very much, and that will do it for this edition of Arirang News. Thanks for watching.